Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're here to talk about something that we talk about every year, and that is the ARC World Tour for 2025-2026. They announced that there would be another tour this year at the end after finals of the most recent tour that just happened. And with the new year of the tour come a lot of changes. Some of them are pretty good, some of them are pretty bad, but all of them kind of give us points to talk about because it's important for us to give feedback to the people that run these tours, whether it be devs or publishers. Otherwise, they have no fucking idea what they're doing. And you will quickly learn that as we go over some of the changes for this year's tour and some of the things that kind of get overlooked as they try to evolve the rule set over time. So what's different about the tour this year? Well, let's start by talking about what's the same. The same three games, which some people will have pushback about. It features Grand Blue, Guilty Gear, and Uni 2. Obviously, last year they did side events for the Blaze Blue games and the old Guilty Gear games as well. But there's been like some conversation about, why isn't Hunter x Hunter on the tour, right? What happened to Hunter x Hunter? I thought you guys really cared about this event. Nothing about that on the tour or anything like that. Maybe there'll be a side event, or I assume that they will do some type of special event at the finals, but they don't want to give it a formal tour yet for this or that reason. I think it would have been a good opportunity given that, it's on the Evo France lineup. So I feel like it would have made at least some type of sense, but we'll talk about game lineup at a later time. So let's talk about what's different about the tour this year. And the first and most obvious thing on the tour that is different is the way that the points work. So last year, there were only platinum, gold, and silver events. And silver events were only online and kind of like given to reputable people in the community that know how to run online tournaments. And most regions only had one of them at max, I believe. This year, things are a little bit different. The silver events are still back, but they added extra tiers in platinum and gold. So there's not only gold and platinum, but there are now gold plus and platinum plus events. And so with adding new tiers comes the question, will they add more events to the tour to compensate for there being more tiers? That remains to be seen so far. In fact, when the original announcement happened for the ARC World Tour, we still don't know all of the events that are on the tour, right? And that's leading to some issues. That's leading to some issues. But I'm guessing they wanted to make the format a little bit more diverse, and so they decided to add these new tiers. And there are some benefits to this, and there's some drawbacks to it. And most of the drawbacks only really exist if you don't have enough events to like make this format make sense. And yeah, unfortunately, there's some glaring issues. There's some glaring issues with doing this. But you might be asking yourself, why did they even decide to do this in the first place? Where did they get this idea from? Well, the idea for this year's tour actually is like strongly taken, like very inspired by the DBFZ World Tour back when. So if you go and you look at their announcement for DBFZ World Tour, you'll even notice like similar, triangle, right? They had power events, they had power plus events, and then they had Tenkaichi events. Now the main difference between this Dragon Ball Tour and the current ARC World Tour is that their Tenkaichi events, which were their opt-in, they had an opt-in system. So you could run an event, as long as you ran an offline event, you could opt your tournament in for points, right? And these are only offline, so there were no onlines as part of this particular tour. And the main difference is that theirs are entrant based. So depending on the amount of entrants that your tournament got, it would scale up. Now, the benefit to that is that you don't run into the conversations that people have time and time again about like, oh, why is this a gold plus event, but it only has X amount of entrants, whenever this one's only a gold event and it has this many entrants, right? So it eliminates that entirely. It just completely scales up based on entrants. The drawback to that, of course, being, underprivileged regions that don't have as large of scenes. I think it's hard for them to even get the required amount of people to even like be a certain event in the first place. Like if you have to hit 24 entrants or 32 entrants to be, the baseline of whatever to earn points. There's a lot of regions that struggle to get there. And then that contributes to it not feeling like a world tour, right? Kind of feels like the NA, EU, Japan tour, not really the world tour necessarily. So some benefits to it, some drawbacks. We don't have that though. We just have pre-designated tiers. We will never learn what makes, like, how they decide what event is a gold event versus a gold plus event. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to discern. But 5 tiers of events. I generally think that this is fine. I think that it's like fine that they're doing more tiers for their events. But the problem, I think the problems are gonna like manifest more and more as like we go further into the tour. So for example, I'll just give you guys an example since this has come up recently. We just got done with Head Stomper and Battle Arena Melbourne, which is an Australian event. Head Stomper is in Europe. And so Head Stomper was a gold event and Battle Arena Melbourne was a gold plus event. And I already saw people ask the question of, Battle Arena Melbourne was not that big of a tournament. It had between like 20 and 30 entrants, whereas Head Stomper had like, I think 80 or 90. And despite that, Battle Arena Melbourne was worth more as opposed to Head Stomper. And in some cases, you would think, you just give the biggest events the highest tiers. But in reality, the fighting game scene is not proportionate, right? The opportunity to go to events is not the same everywhere in the world. And so I think in the case of Battle Arena Melbourne, it makes a lot of sense that it's gold plus, given that Australia is very isolated and there's not going to be a lot of opportunity for people in Australia to actually go to other events. And so it makes sense that the one event that is close to them is actually worth more, at least in my opinion. But why is this even an issue in the first place, right? Why are people even talking about this or that? The reason that people talk about this or that is because the next change in the rule set is that you're actually limited in the amount of points that you can get from each tier. So you can see on this page, you can only get, they take your 2 highest platinums, take your 3 highest golds, and your 1 highest silver. And so with that, means that there is a hard cap on the amount of points that you can earn. And so once you've hit the minimum, or once you've hit the maximum of the amount of events that can count towards, it becomes higher and higher risk to travel to events, because you might travel to an event and not place better than you did before. And so it doesn't actually improve your standing in any way, right? So for example, if you go to a gold event and you place second, you already have the 3, let's say you already have the 3 event threshold, right? If your worst placing at a gold event is like 3rd or 4th place, then that means you have to get better than 3rd or 4th place to improve your standing at another gold event if you decide to travel to it, which in some ways is a really bad thing. And I'll talk about that briefly here. So with this change, adding tiers, and also limiting the amount of points that you can get from each tier, I think that they have overlooked something very, very severely important about World Tours. And that is that, in my opinion, World Tours are supposed to promote people traveling around the planet and playing in a bunch of events and interacting with other communities and kind of having that camaraderie, like, kind of putting the C in the FGC, the community aspect. I think with the way that they've done this particular breakdown and with how strict the limits are, because two platinum events is not very many. 3 gold events is not very many in the grand scheme of things. I think what this actually does is discourage people from traveling to other regions, because if you have a few gold events close to you, then what reason do you have to go international, right? What reason do you have to travel to Australia or Japan or Europe if you're an NA player? If you're in Europe and you have more events than everyone else, like we know they do, what reason do you have to go anywhere else? Why would you go to America? Why would you go to Japan? Why would you go to anywhere aside from stay close to home? And there's not really a good answer to this, right? And that's what I mean by it kind of actively discourages people from participating in the world tour, right? To me, the world tour means that people are traveling and touring the world to play the video game. I think in this aspect, a lot of people are going to be discouraged from doing so because it just doesn't make financial sense, right? Before, when you're unrestricted, you can travel to as many events as you want, and as long as you place within the the actual bounds that give you points, you can still improve your standing. There's no upper bound, right? So you could just keep playing and keep traveling and keep performing well, and you're rewarded with that. Now it's not like that. You have a hard cap on how well you can do, and so a lot of people are just going to hit their required 3 or required 2 for each tier, and then just going to stay at home. And I think that's an issue. The goal of them doing this hard limit is to stop people sniping, right? And it's to stop the feeling that world tours are kind of pay to win, right? Some people have brought this concern up before, that the nature of world tours means that the people that are sponsored or have the most bankroll are going to be positioned the best to perform in these world tours because they can afford to travel all over the place if they need to. And while that may be the case, I think to some extent that is always the case. I don't think you'll ever get rid of it feeling like the people with the most opportunities are going to perform the best. That will always be the case, right? Does this limit it in some way? Sure. But in my opinion, the drawbacks to doing so are more pronounced than the benefit, right? In my opinion, if you're someone that does have those opportunities and you decide to spend time doing so, traveling to play the game, and you're placing well, because again, if you're traveling all over the place and you're not getting top 8s, most of the time you're not getting points anyway, right? Unless you're talking about platinums, which is top 16, which is not easy, right? Top 16 out of platinum is not easy. Top 8 out of gold is usually, it's not that easy, right? It's just not something that's easy to do. So to me, if you're putting in the time and effort to do so, then I don't think there's a problem with you being rewarded for doing so. People will disagree with me about this, but I think this is like the anti-Zane rule, right? Like Zane traveled to a bunch of golds. He had more points than anyone by far. And so they're like, okay, fuck this guy. We're going to put in a limit to how many points you can get. And in doing so, I think they have negatively impacted the community dynamic, right? By kind of discouraging people to like actually, go places. And I think that's a very important part of the tour. So there's that, which is problematic, but other things that are different. The amount of people that are in finals is also different, right? So it is up to 18, and they put LCQ 2 winners. 2 people from LCQ will make it. And this is actually a pretty significant difference. So like 2 people in LCQ as opposed to 1 is a massive difference. I know BSG felt some type of way that they made this change after he placed top 2 in a very close manner, but LCQ 2 slots is actually like significantly easier. It's only 1 more slot, but it is significantly more viable to qualify from the LCQ, seeing that you only have to make it to grands as opposed to win grands, right? Winning an event versus being in grand finals, like 2 completely different things. So that's a big deal. Them having more slots overall is good. I'm always down for them to have more slots, like down for that. This does leave the question about the format though, right? So in my eyes, the fact that they're doing 18 slots for Gear and Rising means that I don't think they're going to do round robin. They're not going to do round robin with 2 out. I don't think, based on how odd of a number 18 is. 18 would really lend itself well to doing like Swiss or something though. Hopefully they decide to make that change. But round robin, like at least if you're going to do 4 pools, that doesn't really make sense, right? If you do 3 pools of 6 and you do round robin, that's better. I mean, but you have more people play, but then your finals bracket is not a square 8, right? And I assume at the end of all of this, they're still going to want 8 people to be in the top 8. So I don't think they're going to do 3 pools round robin. So this really makes me feel like they're not going to do round robin. Certainly they wouldn't fuck up. They wouldn't fuck this up otherwise. But I'm not going to put it past ARC because they've kind of messed up things in the past. But I think that this likely means we're going to get a different format. We've been clamoring about round robin. Swiss is better. Swiss bracket is better. There's so many different formats you could do in a world finals. Stop doing round robin, especially with 2 out, because then you lead into really, really fucked up tiebreaker situations. Like you guys heard about the Razzo thing with Shrive last year, where she had like very, very slightly worse like game percentage, and so she ended up not qualifying or this or that, right? It's not good, right? Don't do this. Don't do this. Pick a better format. Hopefully that's the case. I'm guessing that it's going to be different because of the weird number that 18 is. We will see, but only time will tell. So this is the main point that people have been talking about with this particular tour for Grand Blue. I'm not sure how the clamoring is in other games. Like, I don't know how Strive, I haven't really sat in on much of the talk for Strive's end of the tour with this, but the initial response whenever they dropped the lineup of events on the tour is that it's very disproportionate in that there are way more events in Europe than anywhere else, right? There's way more Europe events than NA. There's way more Europe events than Japan. And even though those are like the three major regions, like those are the three largest regions for the game, it still feels kind of unfair to the players that there's not equal opportunity for golds throughout the tour, which is definitely pronounced. Like if you go and you scroll, it is a lot more. there are a lot more Europe events than anywhere. Now, in my like, I'm using my intuition here. I'm thinking that the reason that they did that is because the amount of plats is like different, right? Like there's more plats in other places, and so maybe they thought, hey, we'll give them more golds. Maybe there's more events that they're gonna put out and it would be more even. Like we've already gotten some more added. Like they added beach episode, they added super tournament, Frosty Fossings got added on there, right? But with that, right, the issue with doing that is that you're giving people less information to participate in the tour, right? Like the people that can feasibly like pick up and travel to play these video games in tournament, right? They need as much notice as possible. And I have a very, very big issue with ARC adding events so soon, and especially in such awkward spaces that they are. So for example, we got news that Beach episode would be on the tour pretty recently. It was like in the last week, 2 weeks, something like that. And where is Beach episode? Well, Beach episode is 2 weeks before Evo, bro. That is like, that's really soon. Like this event is in July. It's not the 1st of June, right? That's not a long amount of time. Like people have to like find the money to travel. They need to get hotels and this and that. And for unsponsored players, that's hard to do, right? That's hard to do. Whereas like Evo, right? Evo, everyone knows when Evo's happening far ahead of time. You can feasibly plan to go to Evo if you really want to make it a goal, right? The golds, which make up a significant portion of your points, because if we go back and we look at the amount of points that you can feasibly gain, right? Assuming you're not winning a platinum event, we'll just put that out there, right? Assuming you're not winning a platinum event because you auto qualify, the max amount of points you can get on the tour from plats is 350, right? That's you getting second place at a platinum plus and you getting second place at a platinum events. That's 350. From golds, though, the max amount, like you could win 3 golds, right? That's 600 points, right? So the golds have quite an impact on your point standing. They can potentially have a huge impact on your point standing, assuming you're not qualifying, you're not auto qualifying. And despite that fact, you know, these events kind of get thrown onto the lineup as if they don't matter, or as if like, oh, they're smaller, so people don't need to worry about going to them. No, they actually do. They actually do need to worry about going to these golds and gold pluses because of how many potential points you can get from it. Like I said, even if we're only typing gold, if we're only counting golds, right? Not even gold pluses. Max amount of points you could get from them is 300. Right. 300 compared to 350 from plats. Like that's not a big difference, right? Well, there will be people that qualify for the World Tour and most of their points are from golds. That is feasible. That is likely because the volume of events. So I don't like them just throwing events onto the lineup as if they don't matter. Especially, like I said, this close to this big of an event, like people need to know ahead of time. People need to know ahead of time. Ideally, like months and months and months. Right. Now, obviously, there are limitations with certain TOs. They can't announce early ahead of time or this or that. I understand that. But I think what makes this feel worse is that this is put into a region that didn't have that many golds announced in the first place, right? Like Beach episode, it's great that it's on the tour. Love the team and all that. But what made it feel worse is that there's not that many golds in the United States as it is. And so now you're throwing it on there, right? And now there's going to be a bunch of people that would have potentially gone, but now they cannot because you've announced it so last minute, right? And I think that dynamic exists for a lot of events. Like there's a lot of events that if people just knew ahead of time, they could actually plan around it. People have lives, bro. They have families, they have jobs. A lot of people can't just drop everything and go to a fighting game tournament, right? Like they need that advance notice or else they can't go. So I don't like that they played it like this. I don't like that we don't know what more events are going to be added as well, because there are some more events that are going to be very, very important that we don't know about yet. So, for example, right, there's 8 plat slots, right? So to qualify through plat events, you must win. You have to win. Only first place. So on here we have 1, 2, 3. This is for Grand Blue, by the way. 4, 5, 6, 7, right? That means there's one plat event that hasn't been announced yet. Now, is it likely Side Games Cup? Probably. It's probably Side Games Cup, especially because we know Kayane Cup's not coming back this year. But for an event that big, it doesn't make sense to me that it wouldn't be even more like advance notice. Like, right? Tell us. It's called Side Games Cup. Your Side Games. Tell us when it is and tell us that it's a plat so that people can start getting shit now and not have to wait until super last minute. This is important. This is important, and they're not doing it, and it's making me mad. All right, I'm sorry. It pisses me off. Okay, that aside, the distribution is kind of weird, and doesn't have enough, especially in some of the regions that are kind of middling. So, like, we talk about what regions are biggest for Grand Blue in particular, right? NA, Europe, and then I would say Japan, but like Asia in general, like it's pretty decent scene, but like Southeast Asia doesn't have as much opportunity as like Japan, right? So I think for World Tour, right? For World Tour, what's really important is that you're giving events of value in those underprivileged places, right? And you could afford to do more than just one, right? Like to me, there should be more South America events. There should be more events in SEA, right? There needs to be more events in these places that wouldn't normally have people like if an event is not on a tour, right? How many players do you think are picking up and going to South America? How many people are picking up and going to Southeast Asia? It's not many, right? Because most people just don't have the finances for that. Like we're not rich. Most of us are not like that. So it's important to give them more opportunity for spots on the tour because it gives them value. It gives them more value. It gives people more of a reason to travel to those places. And that does a lot for a scene, right? It does a lot for a scene to have players from around the world travel to their event and get those in-person interactions and get those eyes on them, because when everyone shows up to an event, even if it's not like the biggest in the world, you know, that's eyes on your stream. That's eyes on your scene. They get to learn about players that they may not have known before, right? There's a lot of people that learned about the strong South America players through Battle Coliseum because there were people that traveled there. Skill went, Riazo went, right? There are people that traveled from other regions to go there. And for that reason, a lot of people learned about a lot of the strong South American players down there and carry forth that knowledge to this day. I think it's really, really important to do that. It feels like they kind of haven't paid much attention to that. Not as much as they should, at least. To me, there should be more golds in those underprivileged places. And, you know, technically they can hide behind the guise of there's more events to be announced on the tour, but do I think they're going to add more in those places? Press F to doubt. We'll see. But I am not feeling like there's going to be that many more. I'm just putting that out there. Okay, another issue. Silvers, right? Silvers are a part of the tour, right? I have two main issues with silvers. One, we don't know anything about them yet. We don't know anything about the silver events yet, right? And that's a problem, just because general, like, tell people what the fuck is going on type stuff, right? But the other thing is the silvers don't really have much of an impact, right? They don't have much of an impact. So I think by hard limiting silvers, right? Well, first of all, doing the hard limit for silvers is like not all that impactful in the first place, just because most regions are only going to have one silver, right? And they are region locked. But I think there's a more impactful way to do silvers that both make it feel like an important part of the tour, but not like it takes precedent over the others, right? The reason that they did silvers in this way, and the reason that DBFZ World Tour that they've modeled after did the, you know, the very, very small amount of online points available is because they don't want it to feel like you can use online events as a primary means of qualification, which is good, right? Offlines should always mean more by a long shot. So I don't mind them saying like, you know, silvers don't mean as much, and so we're gonna put them in this place or that, right? My issue is that why not just axe silver points altogether? Like, to me, you should do an alternative system where you could make silvers worth something that are not points. So for example, like a really, really cool idea is to make winning a silver worth like a trip to a gold or to a plat or something, right? Obviously to plats, like it can be way more expensive. So like, what if you won a silver and they would pay for your trip to go to a gold or something to give you the opportunity to give you greater opportunity to go to these, you know, larger events that are worth more points. And, you know, yeah, they're not worth points themselves, but there's still something very tangible and something connected to the tour. And even if you win a silver, you still feel like you're part of the tour, right? Like you're really a part of it because you get to go to one of the bigger events and participate, right? As it stands now, silvers are worth so little that I feel like for an overwhelming majority of people that are serious about the World Tour, they're going to be meaningless, right? People are going to play in them because they're convenient and they're online, but they're not really going to have that big of an impact on people's overall standings because it's worth so little compared to the golds and plats, right? The 45 points from a silver is not going to make or break someone, most likely, right? Obviously, there's some crazy series of events that could lead to it mattering, but it didn't really matter in this last tour, right? It didn't really make that big of a difference. So I feel like they should go with alternative things. Giving them small amount of points is like very uninspired. There were some other tours that have done things like I talked about, like we talk about like Road to Evo, right? Evo does their series where, you know, you could win a trip to Evo. Dragon Ball Fighters, the first tour they ever did, they did Dragon Radar events and they weren't worth any points because there were no points, right? All of their events were auto qualifiers, right? And so what they did is they did smaller Dragon Radar events that if you won them, you won a trip to a Saga event, which was worth the actual auto qualification. So I think that's a better route. I think that's a way more interesting route too. It's going to give people the opportunity to travel and get to see players that they wouldn't have otherwise seen. Because like I'm sure a player from Australia or a region that doesn't have as many eyes would love the opportunity to go to America or go to Europe or whatever. And these people might be much better at the game than you think, right? Like there's a lot of people that are great at these games that don't really get that opportunity. So I think giving them that would be a big deal, just like for feedback. Another criticism about silver. So last year for Guilty Gear, their silver events were not even like community run tournaments. They were actually all run by ESL. They were like it's called like the PlayStation series or whatever. I forget exactly what the name was, but they were like Sony official tournaments. And there were two main issues. One, they were run like dog shit. They were run like complete dog shit. And it feels like they really didn't care about, quality assurance when it came to them. The other thing was that they were PlayStation only. And that's a big problem because you've divided your player base in a huge way. Like a huge part of your player base is playing on exclusively PC. Why would you make it so the silver events are PlayStation only? Why would they be platform exclusive? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any fucking sense. And so I really, really hope that they do the right thing for Gear this year. And they do the same thing that they did for Grand Blue last year, where the people running the silver events are like reputable online tournament organizers. And at least that helps them out with their streams and their attendance and this and that. I think that does a lot for the community on that end, but we will see. Again, we don't know anything about, we don't have any information on the silvers at all. And we are now we're 5 events into the tour? Yeah, these 5 have passed. Still don't know anything about silvers. That's a problem. Don't know what the hell they're doing, but it is what it is. Okay, next thing, rule set. So Grand Blue has this issue in particular, and we have been talking about this for a long time about how there is no formal standardized rule set for Grand Blue. And for last year's tour, it led to situations where there were gold events that were first to 3 top 8, and then gold events that were first to 2 top 8. Right. And I think that represents a very, very big lapse in judgment on Arxis' end. You need to step in for your tour and say, if your event is on the tour, it needs to be this format. Right. That is your job as the person running the tour. It shouldn't be a toss-up. Right. It shouldn't be a toss-up. It shouldn't be unequal in other places. Right. There shouldn't be gold event. 2 events that are worth the same amount of points on the tour should not have different formats for their top 8s. Right. It just shouldn't. That just should not be a thing. Right. Step in and say, hey, it's all first to 3 or it's all first to 2. Right. Whatever that may be. Now, this game definitely, I think, deserves to be first to 3 top 8, but I would still feel a lot better about the legitimacy of the tour if they stepped in and said, hey, guys, all the tours first to 2 except for this, this, and this. Right. If they did that, at least it's like a formal rule set, but we don't have rules yet. There's no rule document for this tour yet. Why is that? Why is there no rule document? Where is that? Why? We're 5 events into the tour. Why is there no rule document? Makes no sense. Lazy. Put out your fucking rule set. All right. Tired of this. At least on this particular issue, we are making some strides. Evo Japan for Grand Blue was all first to 3. Combo Breaker top 8 was first to 3, which it wasn't last year, which is step in the right direction. But this would be so much less of a worry and so much less of a headache if they just said, hey, you want to be on the Arc World Tour? Your event has to play first to 3 top 8. Right. Then there's no ambiguity. There's no arguments or this or that. They're just going to do it because no event is going to pass up being on the tour. Right. For format things. Yes, there are some difficulties with tournament organizing and scheduling and whatnot, but I promise if you tell them ahead of time, hey, if you want to be on the tour, you have to have first 3 top 8. The tournament organizers are good enough at their job that they will schedule around this. They just will. Combo Breaker did it. Right. So I don't like that there's no, like, you need to tell people what's going on. How are we playing in a world tour without formal rules? How does that make sense? All this does is leave the door open to really, really bad enforcement and really, really ugly things like people changing the rule set at the last minute to fit certain issues or like change things, right? And we've run into that before. The very tour that they modeled after, the DBFZ World Tour, some of you may have heard of this, but they had an issue where a very, very strong player, Garlic Bread, was pretty young. And originally, when they put out their rules, they said that as long as you had a parent or guardian with you, you could participate in the finals, even if you were young. They then changed the rules to make it so he couldn't participate at all. Right. I think he was 15 at first. And then they changed the rules so that you had to be 16 or up. Right. And then the year afterwards, instead of righting the wrong that they did, they just raised the age gap again. They said you had to be at least 18. Right. Which is fucking stupid, by the way. Which is fucking stupid. Right. So stupid. And so, yeah, I have no doubts that Arc is making changes to the rules as the tour is being played, which is a problem. Right. That is a problem. If you're trying to make changes like this, you need to be transparent. And like, it's so basic. It's so basic, bro. How do you have a tour without rules? I don't understand like how this is even remotely okay to like anyone. Like, this is not cool. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. Will they eventually put it out? I'm sure. Will some things inevitably become controversy because they put out the rule set afterwards? Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely, because they're gonna put out maybe they do say something about set length, right? By the time that they put out the rule set, there will already be events that did not adhere to the rules that they put out, right? And thus would not normally be included as part of the tour. But since they waited so late to put out the rule set, they're just gonna sweep it under the rug and say, hey, we didn't know yet, right? That's bullshit. Shouldn't be that way. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. Last major thing about this tour. This is a big fucking deal, right? And I wanted to do a special section for this because this is the most egregious thing on the tour, in my opinion, right? And that is, why is Uni not treated as an equal? Why? Why is Uni only 8 players that is platinum only? Why does Uni not have the same point structure, the same point format tour as the other games. You cannot convince me that this is a good idea. Like last year, we had to give them a pass because Uni released so late, right? Uni released so late. And so it was like, okay, they threw a tour together just so they could be there, right? They did only auto quals and all that. And while I felt some type of way about Uni being treated that way last year, I was like, okay, maybe they ran into difficulties putting things together in time, right? There's no excuse now, right? Uni's been out, and you're still giving them the same thrown together, low effort tour that you did last year. Why? For what reason? Anyone have a good reason? I don't. I can't think of why they would treat Uni this way. I'm sure a lot of the Undernight players are looking forward to getting an actual tour this year because of the circumstances surrounding their release last year. Instead, they're given the same bullshit, watered down nonsense that is only auto qualifiers and then an LTQ. Like, why? You could just get, like, most of the events on your fucking tour already have Uni at them. Just make them worth points like anything else. It's not hard. Like, it pisses me off because, like, Arc is treating a world tour like they're treating a world tour like it's difficult, right? Like, I'm here to tell you on June 1st, 2025, that if you want to run a world tour for a game, it's like so easy. It's so easy. Why is it so easy, Khalil? Because none of these events are actually your own events. If ArcSys was running all of these events themselves, that would be one thing, right? That would be one thing. I would be willing to give them a pass because it's so difficult to do that. But that's not how tours work. Your tour is just assigning value to other people's events. You don't actually do anything except the finals. And so there's no reason that you can't just assign values to the tournaments that are already on your tour for Undernight. Doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Like, none whatsoever. It doesn't take any effort. You just have to give a shit. And they have proven by doing the same bullshit format that they did last year that they do not give a shit about Uni. And that makes no sense. The player base for Uni is fine. There are plenty of people that show up to offlines and their tournaments are sizable. This is not an excuse. In fact, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're saying, well, Uni is not big enough and important enough for us to do an actual format, which again, doesn't make any fucking sense, then how are they supposed to grow and thrive if you keep stifling them with the world tour like this? It doesn't make sense. You could easily right that wrong by saying, hey, they have a real world tour now. If you're a Uni player, here you go. You actually have like a good tour to go to throughout the entire year. But you don't have that. They gave you the same bullshit tour that a lot of people are not going to bother participating in because only the people that win qualify. And that is really fucking difficult, even if you're strong. Think about how many strong players in fighting games don't win majors. There's plenty of them. Does that mean that they don't deserve to be rewarded for their consistency and they don't deserve to be able to showcase their talents on a world stage? No, I don't think that means that at all. And so it's very, very big oversight for them to do this to Undernight. And the crazy part is that it's not even too late to fix this. They could go back and easily do what I said. Just go to big Uni events that you know of, just like you talk to the organizers for the other events, and just make them golds and give them their silvers, give them their plats, and you'll be fine. You can keep the plats the same because you already have 7 plats, right? You already have your plats figured out for Uni. Just go and give them golds and go and give them silvers. And most of the events that you do that for, like I said, will already be events that are on the tour. It does not create any more effort for you. If you're telling me that they choose to not do this so they can cut corners and save a little money on flying people out for world finals that qualify, you have failed the very community that you are trying to throw this tour for in the first place. And this illustrates that you're only concerned with the marketing aspect of it and nothing else. You're not concerned with giving back to the community. You're not concerned with propping them up and kind of stimulating the game scenes that participate in these games. You only care about the marketing aspect. And that is a crime. Not an actual crime, but like you're doing a disservice. This is not good. This is really, really not good. I really don't like this. I don't like this Undernight situation. In fact, if I were an Undernight TO, and I had like even a little bit of resources, I would do my own tour. I would do my own tour. I would just make my own tour. Like I said, it's not hard. The only thing that costs you anything is finals. I would actually give point values to big Uni events, put people on, and I would just do that. I would just do that because they're not doing it for you, so take matters into your own hands. I hope that someone out there does this for uni. And there's plenty of community run tours, right? There's plenty, like people are saying, but oh, that's so expensive and that's so difficult. This already exists for a lot of games, right? We talk about Jazzy Circuit for Third Strike, right? Stuff like that. You can do community run tours. You can just do that. You can do that. We did fucking Paragon Line Gauntlet, right? A little circuit for Tekken. Well, it was only online events, but that illustrates like it's not hard. You can just do that. You just do that. And I hope that the Uni community still bands together. Obviously, like the game is still on the tour in some capacity, so hopefully the best players feel motivated to go and play in these. But I do think that it's unfair. I do think it's unfair, and I really don't like that. So all in all, this tour compared to the last tour, marginally better. Like very marginally, and most of that margin comes from the fact that there's more people in the tour. There's more slots. LCQ is more reasonable to qualify out of, but with all of the other changes, the point cap, the extra tiers, all of that have come a lot of issues that I've gone over here. And like I said, it is important for us to keep bringing up these issues because how the fuck are things going to get better if we don't keep bringing it up, right? It won't. If we let them get away with murder, they will murder. They will continue to murder if we let them get away with it. Okay. I've had enough of ARC and their bullshit. And that's not even talking about the other elephant in the room, which I maybe do another video on about, you know, formal enforcement, and like they're just now starting to speak up on the Umi show situation and all that, right? They're just now doing that, right? This should have been taken care of forever ago. This should have been handled a long time ago, but just now they're starting to say that might be another video in the future. But either way, thank you for tuning in. This was like 10 or 15 minutes shorter than my original recording, so I'm pretty happy with that. But I will continue to do update videos as we get more information if they decide to give it to us. If they don't, then you'll probably get another angry rant video because I'm really over it. But thanks for watching.